Yesterday's ruling out of New York, what really stood out to you?
Well, the sheer staggering number of the fine, 355 million net worth, reportedly between $2 to $3 billion. This is a lot of money. And of course, on top of the Jean Carroll defamation verdicts, Trump has lost approximately $500 million over the past few weeks. So this is a big blow to his financial health.
Absolutely. It might be a financial blow, but it is interesting because the judge has now appointed 2 monitors to oversee the Trump organization, just making sure that none of these figures are false. But that did seem to be very different from what the judge has previously threatened to do, which was basically shut down all of his New York businesses. What's your thought on that?
Well, that was a win for Donald Trump, if there was one win in this case, because before trial, of course, Judge Engoron granted partial summary judgment and ordered the cancellation of Trump's business licenses. That ruling was stayed or paused pending the appeal. So the fact that we now have a monitor continuing and now a compliance officer, and that Donald Trump can not be a director or officer for 3 years and Don Jr. and Eric for 2 years, allows them to still retain ownership of the company, even though they can't operate it for the next few years.
So the appeal process, we heard from Trump's attorneys just blasting this decision. How long could this appeals process take?
Well, it could take months or longer, but this is what we need to know about the appeal. Trump will certainly appeal, of course, but he has to post the full amount of the judgment in escrow with the court. That's what he did with the first Jean Carroll defamation verdict, about $5.5 million, the 5 plus interest. Or he has to get an appeal bond. So this doesn't come for free, even though it may delay things. Ultimately, I think it's going to be hard to reverse this ruling on appeal because Judge Engoron wasn't just the judge in the case. He was the fact finder, and normally findings of fact aren't overturned on appeal.
Okay. Anything else that you want to say on this particular case and decision?
No, but this is the beginning of Donald Trump's legal problems because, of course, his criminal trial starts next month, also in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because Trump's attorneys had asked the judge to delay that case, the judge refusing to do that, and in fact said that jury selection is going to begin on March 25th. That date, does that hurt him? Does that help him?
It hurts him. We're right in the middle of campaign season during the primary. And the irony is Trump has done such a good job of delaying the other criminal trials. The D.C. case has stayed while he's appealing to the Supreme Court related to presidential immunity. Obviously, in Fulton County, Fani Willis, the district attorney there, she's on the run, and there's hearings related to her misconduct. And the case in South Florida related to classified documents, we don't even have a trial date yet, and the parties are still going through the discovery and admission of those documents. So Judge Merchant, the New York judge, says, well, because these other cases are on hold, we might as well move forward in our case, which, of course, was the first one to be filed by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg.
And it's different because we're not talking about civil. We are now talking about criminal. And this, of course, involves the hush money and the allegations surrounding all of that. When it comes to a process such as that, because, again, as you very well know, the legal process can be quick and it can also be incredibly lengthy. So when it comes to this particular case, what are your thoughts on how it could move?
Well, the parties are anticipating 5 to 6 weeks, but I think most of it will be spent on jury selection because Donald Trump, of course, is a polarizing figure. There's people that love him and there's people that loathe him, and everyone's heard about this case. So the judge may have to go through more than 100 plus jurors to get through a panel of 12 that can be fair and impartial. Now, with respect to the evidence, we know that Michael Cohen will be the star witness. And of course, he was the one who actually initiated the investigation that we just talked about, the civil fraud case. But he was Donald Trump's fixer. He was the one who paid Stormy Daniels. So all eyes will be on him during that trial.
Interesting. You also spoke about Fani Willis. Of course, this is the Georgia election interference case. Trump asking that she be removed from this case because of a romantic relationship with the special prosecutor. She took to the stand. She was very fiery. It was quite interesting to watch. What do you make of the testimony so far?
I think it was too little too late for Fani Willis. I mean, she didn't address these allegations for weeks. And she was already late to the game. She was the last to file her criminal case. She waited on it, and she charged 19 co-defendants. Now, some of them have pled, like Sidney Powell and Ken Chesbrough, but her case is nowhere near trial. And of course, she made, allegedly, the biggest mistake of all, hiring her boyfriend to handle the most politicized trial in American history. It's a mistake. It's a distraction. It's a potential ethics issue. And now we're dealing with this sideshow and this circus down there in Atlanta, aside from the merits of the case.
Absolutely. And let's talk about if the judge ruled to take her off of the case, how would that put this case in jeopardy, if at all?
Well, another district attorney would have to take over. So there's a couple of ways that the disqualification could work. The judge can say, well, just Fani Willis and Nathan Wade are disqualified, but other career prosecutors at the Fulton County DA's office, they can continue working on the case. Should essentially be walled off. Or the judge could say that the entire DA's office is disqualified, in which case another DA would have to take over, or the Georgia State Attorney General. But again, it would push this case back even further.
So there was a question that was brought up as all of this testimony was underway. And the question that was brought up was, why did she not just remove herself? No admission of guilt, so to speak, or impropriety. But obviously, as you mentioned, it really has become a sideshow and a distraction. What is the point she is trying to make, aside from, whether she did improper conduct? Because I would imagine all of this could further jeopardize the case that she has worked so hard on.
Of course, she should have stepped down to protect the integrity of the case. Imagine if she's not removed and there's a conviction. Now we have a appellate issue we have to deal with. But sometimes folks are stubborn. They double down. And we saw Donald Trump and Jean Carroll. Now Fani Willis is doing the same thing. She refuses to step down because now there's a whole cloud on these proceedings, whether they're appropriate or not. She is a public servant, and she needs to make sure that the members of the public, like ourselves, have faith in our criminal justice system. And these allegations, they do not help the case. So she should remove herself. Nathan Wade should also step down, and we should proceed with other prosecutors here.
Absolutely. It was interesting. We heard from a number of witnesses last week. What might we see this coming week when all of this resumes?
Well, it's really up to Judge McAfee now. He's heard from Willis herself and Wade and other individuals that testified as to when the romantic relationship started. Some people say as early as 2019. Willis, of course, is saying the romantic relationship started after Wade was hired. But the optics are bad either way. She has now paid her boyfriend $500,000 or $600,000, and there's the perception, at least, that she received the benefit from this, which is improper. So because of this PR nightmare, she needs to get off. But legally speaking, I don't think it's going to result in the case being dismissed against Trump or any of the co-defendants. There's no real conflict of interest because they're on the same side. So I think whatever decision Judge McAfee makes, it won't address the actual merits of the case. I think Trump and the co-defendants will still have to face these charges.
All right, Neama, before we let you go, I know that there's a lot that we just discussed. When it comes to all of these various cases, all of them involving in some part former President Donald Trump, is there any other takeaways, anything that you really want to highlight?
I think the takeaways are, are we going to get trials before the November general election? Because if Trump is reelected, all these cases go away. We know we're going to get it in the hush money case, but that's the least serious of all the four cases. Even if Trump is convicted, I don't think he's going to get any time because some of those charges may even be reduced to misdemeanors depending on what the payments were for. I think the most important case and the most serious one still continues to be the D.C. case that Jack Smith is handling. If the Supreme Court rejects presidential immunity, and I expect them to do so, that's the case that might actually put Trump in federal prison.
Yeah, and let's talk about that just very briefly before we let you go, because we really haven't heard anything else from the Supreme Court. Obviously, their decisions can take weeks. It could take days. We don't know. There is no specific timeline. But when might we expect something from them?
Well, I think we're going to get a decision soon on the 14th Amendment case. I expect them to unanimously or nearly unanimously reverse the Colorado Supreme Court and put Trump back on the ballot there. But the justices know what's at stake here, and their term ends in June. But I expect them to hear briefing on executive immunity, issue an opinion well before then. So we may get a trial in the D.C. case this summer.
A lot to look at, a lot to anticipate. Neama Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this Saturday.
Thanks, Stephanie. See you soon.